What does walking by faith look like? You know, I started this study about 6 weeks ago, and hoping for something good to happen. Maybe to you, maybe to those around you, hoping that it would make a difference. It's my hope every time I speak. And I'll tell you, today is no different. When I was in my early 30s, I don't talk a lot about it, maybe because it's so long ago, and maybe because it's a somewhat of a painful memory for me. But in those years, it was for me, it was a time of great loss and even disillusionment in my faith. I experienced death in people closest to me, some pain that I had never, ever experienced in my life, massive unfairness and injustice, at least from my point of view. And the result of that was for months and months and months, it seemed like, I had what felt like a total disconnect from God. I had anger in my heart. I had emptiness, loneliness. There was confusion and even disbelief on things that I had believed my whole life. It was such a fascinating time because I still would get up every Sunday and preach, but then do my best to hide from other people before and afterwards. And it was really, for the first time in my life, a time of dealing with doubt about the very things that I felt like I had built my life on. I had the same questions that other people experienced during those times. Why wouldn't God answer my prayers? At least answer them the way that I wanted him to. Why did he seem so distant to me? I found myself asking what I always considered to be childish questions, like, why was he letting bad things happen to me? Bad things that had never happened before. I felt most of my life I was pretty insulated from that kind of stuff. But during that period, in my mid to late 30s, it just came crashing down. I thought I knew God's will for my life, but I got up every day and I didn't have a clue what I was supposed to do. It was during those years that I experienced for the first time what I had studied for years in my graduate school. I experienced depression. Those things that I only had a textbook answer for, I had a real life explanation of. I knew what I was feeling. It was a depression that just wouldn't go away. And worse than that, it just seemed like God's promises, they just rang very shallow and very empty. To me, the church and church leaders, I felt like they were calloused, they were hypocritical, they were judgmental, not just on me, but on others. And I can, at this point in my life, I can look back and I can tell you without a doubt, I felt like my faith was crushed. My future was a mystery. I didn't know where to turn or what to do. And there was this time that I made a decision to bring what I was struggling with to my closest circle of friends, my co-workers in the church family that I served as a leader for many years. Most of the people who sat around that circle were people that I had spent the better part of 8 years of my life together with. We worked side by side in youth ministry. We worked side by side in the growth of our church. They were my friends. We shared our lives together. There was no doubt, and even to this day, I have no doubt that they were my friends. But this crazy thing happened when I told them that one night, and I can see it today, nearly 40 years later, just like it was yesterday. We sat in the living room of my house, which is where we had our weekly leaders meetings, and I told them of what I was struggling with. And they wouldn't hear of it. I was supposed to be their leader. I was the one who was supposed to have my spiritual act together. But I realized that many of them, maybe even most of them, were struggling also. They didn't want to hear about my doubts. They didn't want to hear about my struggle. They weren't bad people. They were still my dearest and closest friends, but they didn't know what to do with what I was struggling with. And I felt totally rejected. I was totally deflated. And I can say this, with the exception of Wanda during those years, Wanda, my wife, I felt totally alone. They didn't know what to do with me, and I didn't know what to do with them, and I didn't know what to do with the struggle, the faith struggle that I was having in my life. I made it through. I am still here today. And so I'll ask you this question. Where do doubts come from? I think over the years, I've come to understand there is a sort of a pathway to doubt in our faith. It goes something like this. If God is all-powerful and totally good and totally loving, why doesn't he stop bad things from happening to me? It's just a simple logic that we carry around with us. If God is all-powerful, totally good, totally loving, how can he sit by passively and watch these things happening to me? Why doesn't he stop them? And when that happens, it is really easy to begin doubting that he even exists at all. Doubting that he cares. Doubting that the Bible is a reliable source of truth for us to understand not just our own lives, but to understand God. We can even begin doubting whether the resurrection of Jesus ever happened at all. So I'll ask you this. Is it possible for faith and doubt to coexist? There's a study in the Bible, one that we have looked at probably many times. It's the story of a father of what the Bible calls a demon-possessed boy. And in this father's total anguish and despair and feelings of hopelessness, he turns to Jesus for help. This father's life had been a long, dark night, attempting every imaginable remedy for his son's horrifying and tortured madness. And nothing worked. Nothing. And in the father, conflict between doubt and despair and faith was simply ruining him. It was very understandable. It is so very human. And after Jesus had been called to the man, he asked the boy's father this question. How long has he been like this? How long has the boy been like this? And from childhood, the father answered. It has often thrown him into a fire, or the demon has tossed him into the water to try to kill him. It's been horrible. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And the story is recorded in Mark chapter 9. And in verses 23 and 24, we read this. If you can, said Jesus. He looked at the man and said, you are saying to me, if you can? Everything is possible for the one who believes. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Seems like there's something wrong in that statement. I believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Well, first off, let me say this. Doubt and unbelief are not the same thing. I think to Jesus, there's a difference between doubt and unbelief, and there should be for us also. Henry Drummond was a 18th century Scottish evangelist and a biologist, a scientist, incredible man, a short life, left with us books to read and papers that he wrote, recordings of his sermons. He's amazing. And I think he was the one that originally said this. Doubt is can't believe. Unbelief is won't believe. You see, doubt is honesty. Unbelief is obstinance. Doubt is looking for light. Unbelief is simply content with darkness. There's a huge difference between the two. You know as well as I do that it's easy to have faith when everything makes sense. But it's difficult and painful to trust God and to live for Him when things simply don't seem to add up. So remember this, the path to doubt is this. If God is all-powerful, totally good, and totally loving, why doesn't He stop bad things from happening? One minute it seems perfectly natural and unquestionable that God exists and cares for the world. And then the very next moment it seems totally naive to believe that. You and I have both had those dialogues inside our brain. Have you sometimes felt like walking out of a church service because the whole thing just seemed contrived and empty and even unnecessary? For me, I've come to believe that an honest doubter is one who is deeply thinking and deeply questioning the things that are most important in life. At least that's the way it works for me. When I doubt, my mind is at work. I hold on to this. Brennan Manning is one of my spiritual heroes, and he once said this: when I get honest, I admit I am a bundle of paradoxes. I believe and I doubt. I hope and I get discouraged. I love and I hate. I am trusting and suspicious. I am honest and I still play games. Yep. That pretty much sums up who I am. A bundle of paradoxes. Too many believers think they have they've captured this whole thing that we call faith, this message of Christianity. And it's like they place it in this neat, tidy little box. And then we put a sticker on top of the box that says, don't ask, don't tell, don't cause problems with your questions, don't make waves, don't raise your hand, don't doubt. So what do I do with those times when my intellect challenges my beliefs? Well, I'll tell you this. I fight back. I read. I study. I pray. I talk to others about it, even though I have one of the worst experiences of my life. I tucked back away in my memory of when I actually talked to others about my struggle. It wasn't good, but it didn't stop me from doing that. Faith and trust in Jesus is the most important element of my existence. Why wouldn't I fight for it? At a really young age, I learned the best thing I could do for my faith. Really, the best thing I could do for my faith and my battles with doubt and questions and emotional emptiness and intellectual struggle, which comes in and out and comes and goes, the best thing I could do was to be responsible for the faith development of others. That is what I needed for me. Are you struggling with doubt right now? Do you have unanswered faith questions? Are you ready to have your unbelief helped? Here, let me give you something to do. Volunteer to teach some second graders on Sunday mornings here. Or volunteer to meet regularly with a group of ninth grade young people. And I'll tell you, you'll get your spiritual act together. Man, the pressure is on because the questions that come from those kids are unrelenting. And you know what you do when you get questions that come from young people? You get on your knees and you pray and you break out books and you start studying because you know that you've got to come face to face with them soon. It's the greatest thing in the world for your faith. For real. Here's the truth that I live with. Doubt is necessary. You gotta have it or you won't grow. So don't run from it. Embrace it. Let doubt be the fuel that propels that propels you to diligence in pursuing the ways and words of Jesus. Let it become your friend. Let's end today. I know I've gone a little longer today. I'm sorry about that. But let's end today with words that the Apostle Peter was facing when he was in prison. He was facing execution because of his faith. And he wrote to churches scattered throughout all of the Roman Empire who are facing similar persecutions. Around 30 years after the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Earlier, he had written the words for them to make every effort to pursue goodness and knowledge and self-control and patience and godliness and love. And then he writes these words. It's in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 10. It says this, "Therefore, brothers and sisters, be all the more diligent to make certain about his calling and choice of you. For as long as you practice these things, you will never stumble." Doubt may be present. It's probably always present in some form. So let it persuade you. Let it motivate you. Let it inspire you. If you pray that God will help you in your unbelief, He will. He always does. Now, as we go to the table of the Lord's Supper, let's come to the table today with our doubts, with our struggles, with our questions and intellectual frustrations. Stop running. Stop acting like we've got all the answers, and humbly approach God as seekers. Just come to the table with a hopeful expectation as we eat the bread and drink the juice of His life that is given on our behalf. Till next time, see ya.